1, 2, 3, 4.
The views expressed on the following broadcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting or its affiliates. The dialogue on this show should not be considered as medical, psychiatric, or professional advice and is delivered only as personal opinions from the host, co-host, and guest. KHLT Recovery Broadcasting is not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship. And now, here's your host, the Monty Man.
Well, greetings, one and all. Welcome to another fine episode here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial. We are broadcasting from the studios of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting on the outskirts of beautiful downtown Albany, Oregon. Our email address is take12radio@comcast.net. You're listening on your tablet or your smartphone or whatever. Our main website is take12radio.com. You can type that in, TAKE, the number 12, radio.com, or the word 12. Either way, it'll take you to the same place. It is good to have you with us. And I have to say, I'm so excited because we are broadcasting on so many other networks now, AM and FM stations across the country through the Graceful Living Network. Those fine folks, of course, on the Bill Post Radio Network, and here on all of our social media networks from A to Z at Take 12 Radio. And listen, we are in the process right now, excuse me, of screening and interviewing possible new sponsors for 2015. We're pretty picky about who we hitch our wagon to. But if you are, if you're a treatment facility, a clinician, a treatment provider, if you have a website or a business that is related to recovery and you believe in treating the whole person, you're holistic, body, mind, spirit, nutrition, the whole 9 yards, we want to hear from you. We are also in the process of looking at a few different coffee companies and taking some bids on that. So if you happen to be affiliated with an organization that sells coffee, then get in touch with us. Would you? You can go to our website at take12radio.com, click on advertise with us, and all the information there. There's some samples of some promotional ads and so forth, and we have several packages to choose from. So I just wanted to get that out there to you. This is the first time I've talked about it at all, and because we're really coming up against 2015 before you know it, and we'd like to have you on board. All right, Roger McDiarmid is my guest this week on Interview Friday, and he's a gentleman that I met some time ago at one of Dick B's conventions. And most of you know that listen to the show are familiar with Dick B. For those of you who are not, Dick B is probably the foremost authority on the history of Alcoholics Anonymous in the world. And he has a tremendous ministry and organization called the Christian Recovery Coalition. Roger is a member as well as I am. And we met at, I think it was Mariners Church down in the Southern California area several years ago. And Roger's got a story to tell. Look, his story is full of self-destructive, self-centered, obsessive-compulsive behavior, just like you and me. And it manifested itself in alcoholism, in broken relationships, in bankruptcy, in lost jobs. There's much more to his story than that, and I'm going to allow him to share some of that, and we're going to talk about some recovery issues and some of our opinions. Roger, welcome to the show, brother.
Glad to be here, Monty. Thank you.
You bet. Now listen, was it Mariners Church that we met?
It was Mariners Church in 2008 when Dick had his conference there.
Yeah, what a beautiful campus that is, isn't it?
Oh, it's an amazing facility. Yeah, just a great campus.
Yeah, really, really nice, really nice. Well, Roger, you've been doing this thing for a while now, but your life wasn't always going in the direction that it's going today. True?
That is very true. That is very true. Yes.
What was going on, man?
Well, it's interesting. It's a long journey, but let me just tell you that I was born and raised in Whittier, California. I grew up with a phenomenal pair of parents and a couple older brothers, none of which were alcoholics. And I reconstructed sort of my life story when I look back on it. But, my first drink was around 15.
Yeah.
And I remember it well. I remember how it made me feel. And, then I went to college, and you go through high school and college. I played a lot of sports in high school, so alcohol and drugs didn't really get a hold of me at that point in time. But as I got into college and then out of college and into the business world, it just progressed. And honestly, my story is I didn't know anything about alcoholism. I didn't know anything about the illness, the spiritual nature of it. I really didn't know anything about it, and it just progressed and got me as I walked around the professional world, and it's a journey now that I'm completely blessed by. But at the time, it was pretty horrifying when I was going through it all.
Sure. So, we know that sometimes this thing genetically can skip generations, entire families. I mean, grandparents, cousins, everybody and their brother then show up unexpectedly. When I speak in front of young people, I always, especially high schools, I get the question, well, I've never had a beer. What's wrong with just trying one? And I'm like, well, let's talk about that for a minute. We know that 1 in 5, if not more, will cross that line of addiction, and they have the genetic bent before they ever put it in their bodies. How is it important that young people today understand that this is risky stuff, just even experimenting?
Absolutely. Well, what happened to me was after I got my first DUI in 1987, and then the second one in 92, and 96 was the last one. But during that time in 96, I went into a recovery center, and there was a counselor that came in and explained the fact that our brains don't process drugs and alcohol like, quote unquote, the normal person.
Right.
And that was tremendous kind of insight into my illness and who I was and why did I do what I did and why did I drink that way. And I never knew that. And so it's like, oh, okay, so I have this chemical reaction that takes place that we fondly refer to in Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous as an allergy, and it creates this phenomenon of craving. I just didn't know any of that before. So how could I, if I wasn't armed with the information, I certainly didn't know what path I was walking down.
When you learned this about yourself, did it help you to understand that you weren't this terrible individual, that you were actually sick?
Well, what helped me was to find out that regardless of how I behaved, I was still God's kid.
Yeah.
And that the first step in recovery, as I uncovered, or it was told to me, was the admission to my innermost self that I, in fact, am an alcoholic, and that I am, in fact, the problem. And then realizing the chemical situation with my brain means that you can't drink or drug or do that for any reason. And so that began to make a little bit of a sense so I could build a foundation where I could go forward. Because before that, of course, I just wasn't willing. Until it says in the Big Book that the key and the essential ingredients of recovery are open-mindedness and willingness. And, of course, we have to get rigorously honest with ourselves and everybody else. And that wasn't my nature. It just wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I get it. Me either. And you were. Let me ask you this: Were you a man of faith before all this started happening, or did you become a Christian in the middle of your active alcoholism? How did that pan out?
I'm so glad you asked that, because that's been a part of my journey that's kind of interesting. I was raised Catholic. I went to 12 years of Catholic school, and while I was growing up, I basically always believed in God. I could tell I believed in the Trinity. Those were just bits of information that I accepted as being the truth. So I never didn't believe in God. And I also, in looking back, I never got mad at God for the things that happened to me, which is also sort of interesting because I didn't blame him because in my mind, he didn't do anything. God didn't do anything to me. I did what I did to myself. So I never had this horrible resentment at God. I always believed in God. Mm-hmm. And in believing in God, it gave me some sense of right and wrong and morals, but addiction and alcoholism just blocks that out. It completely blocks that out. And I also realized that I didn't really have faith. What I had was belief, but I didn't really have faith. And so as this journey is going along, and actually in 1974, my wife and I, we actually were married by Chuck Smith at Calvary Chapel. And I look back on that when I went through counseling with one of the pastors there, and so they ask you all the questions about, are you a believer, and do you know Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, and these kinds of questions. And of course, I answered yes to all of them. But as I flash forward through my life, I became the prodigal son. I mean, and while I had belief, I wasn't walking by faith, and then the addiction and alcoholism took over, and so it just blots out all that. So I was never not a believer, but I don't know that where my faith was. It was not right. It was certainly not walking with God.
You mentioned an interesting period of time, 1974, Calvary Chapel. We're talking the Maranatha movement, right?
Absolutely. I was right in the middle of it.
Yeah, right in the middle of that. That was an exciting time. And there was music coming on the scene that a lot of people in the faith community never heard before. And, yep. We were on the we were on the brink of, Larry Norman and Randy Stonehill and all these guys. And of course they went on to become very popular years later. But there was like the Christian coffee house thing going on. There was, people discovered the overhead projectors. I remember when that today it's PowerPoint. Back then it was the overhead projectors, Birkenstocks, and your acoustic guitar, right?
Right.
Yeah. So along with that, though, was there a sense of, well, you're a Christian now, you're a believer, or you always have been one, and now you're kind of, you're really coming to realization, you got married, heck, Chuck Smith married you at Calvary Chapel, for crying out loud. What are you doing, having a problem with alcoholism? Was there kind of a mentality that people didn't understand?
Yeah, well, I was the first one to jump in that line. I didn't understand, when I look back on it, exactly what was going on. I was on the men's prayer watch there. Our family was baptized by Chuck and so forth. So that was in 74. In 1985, I left my whole family. I got fired from my job, and I left my beautiful wife and two young daughters, and went out for 11 years, and that's when I collected the 3 DUIs and filed bankruptcy and so forth. And then finally I sort of woke up in 1996 and said, I just can't live this way anymore. And that was, once I said that, and I kind of like Bill Wilson cried out to God for help, he was right there, of course, to help me. And the journey began, and now here we are some almost 18 years later.
So, okay, so let me ask you this, my friend. Did you, before you were introduced to the world of the 12 steps, had you heard things that were anti-AA and anti-12 step within your faith circles?
Well, what's interesting is I don't know that I heard much of anything about Alcoholics Anonymous. Or, if someone was talking to me about it, I surely wasn't listening. But if I was listening, I wasn't relating. And it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't until, quote unquote, I hit bottom, that I began to listen, and then the Holy Spirit began to work on me, and Alcoholics Anonymous made perfect sense, and there was the idea to start the journey of the 12 steps and so on, right? I must tell you that didn't just wake up and get holy one day. I was looking at some jail time, and I was trying to keep my rear end out of the jail. So
right.
That's how it began. But interesting to see in hindsight how God was there the whole time. And the prodigal son story, it was my story.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So, no, but I don't remember even having discussions about it. Although, in Silver in 96, I was sent to AA in 87 and 92. And as I frequently share, I went and met the folks at the fellowship and thought they were weird. And, of course, I was okay.
Oh, of course.
Clearly wasn't the case.
Right. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk to you more about your introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous as a man of faith. And let's talk about that a little bit, because there's some really interesting stuff going on these days, right?
Oh, boy, I'll tell you, it's exciting stuff.
And some people would be, some people are freaking out, and other people are excited, and some people are discouraged. And I'm here to tell you, God's still on the throne. He's not dead. Don't go away, folks. More when we come back with my guest, Roger McDiarmid, when we return.
Free by the Sea is a drug and alcohol recovery center located in beautiful Ocean Park, Washington. This facility is amazingly gorgeous, but what's even more amazing is the integrity of the staff and the treatment provided for those wishing to recover from narcotic and alcohol addiction. The folks at Free by the Sea have a passion for presenting the solution to addiction for you or your loved one. To speak with an admission specialist, visit freebythesea.com or call toll-free 800-272-9199. This place is simply amazing.
My baby boy was a very good sleeper. He would nap in the morning and nap again in the afternoon, so my routine became that I would drink the first half of the time I expected him to sleep so that I could pass out the second half. Even during my pregnancy, knowing that it might be harmful to the baby, I could not stop drinking. The fear of any harm to that child was not enough to make me stop. Sometimes I would try to go to the park with him, but I was becoming really fearful of people finding out what a sick person I was. Today, since I joined AA, I don't have that sensation anymore at all. I have a purpose in life today. I know who I am. I know where I'm going, and I feel good about it. I can be a mother to my child, and I can be a wife to my husband, and I couldn't be any of those things when I was drinking. Alcoholics Anonymous, it works. Look us up. Check your phone book, newspaper, or AA.org.
All right, welcome back. You've joined us here at Take12Radio.com on your internet dial, the world's only faith-based recovery radio talk show, broadcasting recovery talk and positive music 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have workshops, we have seminars, symposiums. We'll come out to your conference and cover that. We got a conference coming up called the Evolution of Addiction Treatment Conference coming up in February down at the Airport Westin Hotel and Convention Center in Los Angeles. And you can find out more information by going to our website and clicking on the link for that. But we're available and here for you. My guest this week, Roger McDiarmid, he's sharing his experience, strength, and hope. This portion of the show, sponsored by Serenity Springs Recovery Center. Addiction is a disease that deteriorates the body, punishes the mind, and destroys the spirit. Addiction needs to be attacked on all three of these fronts, and Serenity Springs does just that. I have personally been to, my friends, and enjoyed the company of the staff and the clients at their beautiful resort-style campus in Edgewater, Florida. I highly, highly recommend that you check them out for yourself or for you or that loved one that you're concerned about. Visit their website at serenityspringsrecovery.com or call their 24-hour admissions department at 844-377-7464. Follow the links here at Take 12 Radio. Roger McDiarmid is my guest. Roger, you are a member of the Christian Recovery Coalition, as am I. There's actually a lot of people that are. one of the reasons that we do what we do here at Take 12 Radio is because I believe that those of us who are members of the faith community have come very close at times in losing our voice in amongst the secular 12-step community, which many of us are active in. And I think in some circles it's actually getting worse, and I think in some circles it's actually getting better. What's your take on it?
I couldn't agree more. It's interesting. When I met you and I met Dick back in 2008, there was a lot. You know, what happened to me was a sponsee of mine walked up and said, "Hey, have you ever seen this book?" And he handed it to me. He goes, "This is the Good Book and the Big Book by Dick B." And I go, "No, I've never seen it, never heard of it." And he told me a real quick story. He said, "Yeah, I called this guy, this number on the back, and I got this old guy in the lobby who answered the phone, and we talked for like an hour." And I go, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, it was Dick B." And that's how I found out about the conference. I said, "I'm going." And so it was really interesting. That's how I met the Christian Coalition and you and Dick and so forth. And it was really the beginning of a journey which has turned into kind of my vocation, my ministry, if you will.
Right.
I didn't know it at the time, but that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And what was interesting is when I heard Dick tell his story that he was been to like 1,000 AA meetings, and some guy named Johnny came up to him who was much younger than him and said, "Hey, Dick, you know all this stuff just came from the Bible." And Dick said, "I've never heard of such a thing. I've been to 1,000 meetings, and no one ever told me that." And, of course, we know what that jettisoned Dick into his quest for the information and research on the history, which is, I love guys that do all the work for me, Monty, and hand me all the information and all the goodies of their work, and I get to utilize it, and that's exactly what Dick did.
Yeah. And folks, if you're curious, Dick and his son Ken, you can visit their website at dickb.com. And I really, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, listeners, because we have a lot of listeners that believe all sorts of different things, and I'm so glad they listen. But you cannot deny that this stuff is extremely informative and interesting. And I think the best way to get to know somebody or something is to read and learn about it. And, with over 34 books to his author portfolio, Dick has certainly done his research. And one thing I love about his literature, the reason that his books are so thick, I mean, they're big enough to choke a mule, is because a quarter of them are all the references in the back. He makes sure that he proves everything he says. And that is something a lot of people won't do. A lot of people will spout their opinions, but they won't back it up with truth and facts. And Dick does that, and I so appreciate that. It makes for a little dry reading sometimes, but I'll tell you what, you can't argue with it. You can disagree with it, but you can't argue that it says what it says. True?
That is so true, and I remember Dick saying at a conference I was at, he said, I'm a reporter of the truth. And I try not to editorialize anymore. I tell my story, which is a fact. I relate the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then I report the truth of our history and where it came from. And those are the facts, and there's so many people like you and me, Monty, and Dick himself, who find ourselves in the fellowship, sometimes by choice, but typically, at least in my case, not by choice. And we don't understand the roots. We don't understand where this fellowship came from. And so, and when you read it with a different perspective, lights start to come on and worlds change, and pretty soon you become, an avid participant. And we have to participate in this recovery process, or we won't get well. We just won't.
One of the things that I've experienced in my travels, in traveling to different events and covering different events for the radio station, is the closer you get to Akron, where this whole thing, kind of blossomed, you get more back into the roots of the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, even some of the methods that were used. You kind of travel towards New York, where the World Service Office is, and things start to change. It becomes very man-centered instead of God-centered. You move across the United States, and by the time you get to the Pacific Northwest, you're not even using the word higher power anymore. It's weird. It's wild, and that concerns me. And like I said at part of the show, I said God's still on the throne. He's still in charge. But do you have some concerns of your own as far as the fellowship goes and its relationship with our Maker?
I have huge concerns. The issue is, as it says in the 164 pages, God either is or he isn't.
Yeah.
What was your choice to be? A price had to be paid. Well, okay, so let's talk about that. I mean, God in the 12 steps, when you go back to the beginning, it is the God of the Bible. See, those are the facts, and what one thinks about that is irrelevant.
Yeah.
The facts are the facts. So let's deal with the truth about the program, because the 12 steps will change your life. I mean, they were given to Bill and Bob and the rest of the early guys. And the fact of the matter is, it came from the Oxford group. So know the truth, and take out all your emotions, and just look at the facts. It's kind of like the old, see, Money, you and I are old, so a lot of maybe listeners don't remember the Dragnet TV show.
Oh yeah,
but Glad used to say, "Just the facts, man, just the facts."
Yeah.
So I mean, I kind of harken back to that. The point is I want to know the truth. I don't want you to tell me the truth. I want to know the truth. And it's interesting that that's what Jesus said. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. Well, that's embedded into our rich history.
Yeah, and we're living in a culture today where we've gone from denial to being deluded a lot of times. And, the thing that concerns me, this thing is so multifaceted, it's incredible. But one of the things that concerns me is when making the approach, which very few people do anymore as far as like working with other people. We wait for people to come to us. But in making the approach, we've stopped qualifying people. We've stopped really researching and finding out, are they truly alcoholic or are they just alcohol abusers? Because as well as I do, that you need to know that to know how to treat the illness. And, I think the 12 steps and meetings and the platitudes and all that stuff are wonderful for people that just need to grow up. But for people that literally have the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body, if your God is the 12 steps, I'm going to challenge you on that. You're going to have to go deeper than that. And I say this all the time. There's no power in the steps. The steps are there to show us our need for a power. And I'm
clearly says that, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that we're getting so meeting dependent, and so there was a time in my life, Roger, that I couldn't figure out why all that time I was spending in prayer and devotions wasn't working. And my sponsor pointed out to me, maybe you're depending on the prayers instead of the one you're praying to.
I relate to that. I resemble those remarks.
Yeah. And I think some of that's going on in our fellowships today. We're depending on the fellowship. We're depending on the literature and not the one the literature is about.
Well, I think it's important, again, to go back to our text. In the big book, it says that we suffer from a spiritual malady. And it says very clearly that if you don't address the spiritual malady, you will not straighten out mentally, physically, and emotionally. So I think the fellowship wants to address the physical, mental, and the emotional by just not drinking and talking about it, but they don't realize that the spiritual malady is still there. And so we don't become the whole person that God created us to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it's on, and correct me if I'm wrong, listeners, or anybody, I believe in the third edition of the big book, I believe it's on page 99, It's in the chapter Working with Others, and then going over to page 100. It says to remind the prospect, the person you're going to be working with, that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. And that tells me that my sanity, I mean, we're trying to be restored to sanity, not sobriety, sanity, that is dependent on my relationship with my Maker, not on a room full of people.
Exactly.
Or a sponsor, or a mentor, or a pastor, but God Himself. And you know, Roger, there are meetings. There are. I can't even. I cringe even saying this. There are meetings. There are AA meetings registered with the World Service Office that will not allow you to even bring the big book in the rooms. Did you know that?
No, I mean that's atrocious. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
no,
it's
I mean,
bizarre.
I've heard that. I haven't been to those. But
yeah,
that's sad. It's sad because that's not Alcoholics Anonymous, regardless of what New York says.
Yeah, that's right. But having said that, because I said there are some people that are freaking out, going, what's going on? And some of us are going, hey, it's going to be okay. God is still in charge, and I believe that God is alive and well in AA. Don't you?
Absolutely, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize it, but I've been planted there to share the truth and the love of God for His people that suffer. And when you find I go to a church, a recovery church, it does the same thing. And when I met my pastor, which was interesting, the same year that I met you and Dick, I found Pastor Joe Fury, and he said, I'm about building bridges. I want bridges that walk across to Alcoholics Anonymous and then come back to church, both ways. Because you go to church and you say, hey, people look like you're a cult member, and you go to Alcoholics Anonymous and mention church, and they look at you the same way.
I know.
And that's not, the point is we're the same people.
Yeah, that cracks me up. We're going to talk a little bit more about that bridge between the church and AA when we come back. Folks, don't go away. More with my guest, Roger McDiarmid, when we return.
Origins Recovery Centers provides integrated inpatient treatment for substance abuse and co-occurring disorders. At Origins, clients receive expert medical, clinical, and spiritual care individually designed for their needs. Our clients leave Origins with the foundation upon which they will build the rest of their lives. Call now to speak with an admissions specialist. Our toll-free number is 888-843-8935. That's 888-843-8935. Origins, delivering real solutions for real families.
Men, women, and their families experience tremendous pain and suffering due to the struggles they face from substance abuse and its co-occurring mental health challenges. They need to find a safe place for peace and healing. Therapia Addiction Healing Center was born out of a deep desire to provide that safe and powerful healing environment. Therapia exists to help people recover from addictions by developing and maintaining healthy, meaningful relationships with God, self, and others. To speak with an addiction specialist, call 1-855-652-4325. That's 1-855-652-4325. Or visit our website at www.therapia.net. Therapia Addiction Healing Center, restoring lives one step at a time.
Welcome back, my friends. Well, as much as I love the Doobie Brothers, I love DC Talk even more, and that's their version of Jesus is still all right with me. Good job, DC Talk. Yes, indeedy. Well, welcome back to the world's only faith-based 12-step recovery radio talk show, broadcasting to you 24/7. My guest this week is Roger McDiarmid. We've been talking about his experience, strength, and hope, and we left off talking about the bridge between the church and Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, Roger, we it was really interesting. We have, I think there's probably 5 Celebrate Recovery meetings in the little teeny tiny town of Albany, Oregon. And there's, I think, about 12 AA meetings and 5 NA meetings. I mean, the recovery community is definitely not lacking in its meeting structure. But we tried to put together a thing called Recovery Life. And we had it out at Oak Creek Christian Center, which is a huge building. And it was a workshop to educate the faith community, clergy, and lay people on the truth of addiction and recovery. And one of the things we spent a great deal of time doing in the workshop was explaining some of the misconceptions of the secular 12-step community. The higher power issue, and God as we understand Him, and God as we understood Him, and is God a doorknob, and blah 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 blah. And I got to tell you, I get it. I understand why the faith community thinks that AA is a cult, because AA has done the fellowship. When I'm saying this, I'm referring to the people in the fellowship. We've done a very poor job of staying true to the original building blocks of this thing. And we have come across like a cult. In fact, in many cases, it is very cult-like. And so I get it. But what we tried to do was we tried to teach people, look at God as I understand Him is an action statement. It means as I grow in my understanding of Him. And we talked about what happened between the gentleman that burst into Bill's office demanding that he take God out of it, and then you don't hear the other side of the story. They found him later on with the Gideon Bible, turning his life over to Christ. You never hear that part. But we tried to calm people down and say, look, it's okay. God is alive and well in AA. You don't have to be freaking out. And it was really interesting, Roger, because when we got to the part in the workshop, this is over several days, when we got to the part of the workshop where people actually were challenged to take a look at themselves, our attendance dropped considerably.
Before they get to that point in the 12 steps, leave. They don't want to look at themselves.
Right. And we were talking about this on Wednesday's show, because Wednesday's show, the topic was personalizing the 4th step, and why we lose so many people at the 4th step, because now it's about taking responsibility and owning our stuff, and we don't want to do that. But I have found that people that do that recover. True?
Absolutely. I harken back to when I was, growing up as a kid, and we had to go to confession. I never went to confession and opened up about myself. I had a rote set of things that I would tell the priest about what I was doing, none of which were honest. I mean, it wasn't. It was just what you did. But I was basically a liar, a cheat, and a thief then. It didn't even it didn't resonate with me. I didn't understand it. And when Jesus said to, confess your sins one to another, I get it now. I mean, we have to open up and get rid of the stuff and the lies and all the stuff that we carry around, so that we can grow in the Spirit. I mean, if we're dealing with spiritual illness, we need to address that issue.
Okay, and you had mentioned something that's very interesting about you tell people in the church that you're involved in a 12-step fellowship, particularly Alcoholics Anonymous, and they look at you like you're in a cult, and you tell the people in AA the same thing, and they look at you the same way. My experience was I had a lot of well-meaning people tell me that the reason I relapsed and they kept drinking and doing the things I was doing was because I just didn't have enough faith, or I didn't love God enough, or I wasn't taking the Bible seriously, and nothing could have been further from the truth. But I didn't understand the illness at all. And then we have this conflict, the age-old argument: is it a moral issue or is it an illness? And so we have this thing going back and forth, and it's this us against them thing. Do you think it's getting better?
I do think it's getting better, and what I can just tell you what's happened to me. I got sober at a 6 a.m. meeting in Howell Hall, and in Huntington Beach, I used to go there virtually every morning, and I met my sponsor there, and it was the beginning of the process and the journey for me. And I used to, after that, on Sunday mornings, I would frequently go to church, which happened to be a Calvary Chapel at the time. And it was really interesting. I would go and hear the message in the meeting in the morning, and then I would go to church. And I can't tell you, Monty, how many times I sat in church after just leaving AA and virtually hearing the same message. It was cloaked a little differently. The vocabulary might have been a little different.
Right.
But the message was very clearly the same. And I remember very vividly walking in one Sunday morning, and Pastor Mike was up there, and he said, it's been said that truth without love is brutality, and love without truth is hypocrisy. And when I heard that, it bells and whistles went off in my mind. And it's been a paradigm in my life ever since then. And what I realized is that you can go to church and you can hear a whole lot of truth about God with no love. And that's brutality. And you can go to AA and you can hear a whole lot of truth about the 12 steps without love. And it's brutality. And that doesn't bring people to liking either one. Or you can go to the places where they just love on you and tell you, it's okay, brother, don't do the steps. Just keep coming back. Just don't drink. Well, that's hypocrisy, because we have to get down to the root causes of the issues and address them, and that you've got to get down and deal with God. So it changed the way that I talk with people. That coupled with that line that Dick said, I'm a reporter of the truth. When I realized that when one presents the truth with love like Jesus did, people will listen. When you just beat them up from the pulpit or the fellowship and you don't love on them, they're not going to listen.
Right.
And they don't think you care. They think that you're just being condemning and judgmental and so on and so forth. And so when you look at Jesus and you see his ministry, he was all about love, but he always told them the truth.
Yeah.
So it was very attractive. I remember Rich Bueller on the radio years ago. He said, on his radio show, he said, are you a fragrance when people are around you? Are they attracted to you because you're a fragrance? Or are you an odor? for God, it's those little snippets become paradigms in my life that I don't want to be an odor.
Right. Okay, Roger, repeat this quote again. Truth without love is brutality. And what's the second part?
Love without truth is hypocrisy. And we see that running rampant in churches and AA all the time. Not many people put it together, and it won't work without both. Jesus said that. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. But he said, I am love. He said, if you do everything in the world and you have not love, you have nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And thus the reason so many people are in love with Jesus but hate church.
Exactly. And the same with people who get in the fellowship. If people aren't convinced that you really genuinely care and that you love them, when I talk to people, I say, look, I know exactly how you think because I'm you.
Right.
They can drop their guard right up front because I'm not somebody other than who they are.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the truth of the matter for me. When I walked into the doors of my 12-step fellowship, you could have crushed me. The first day that happened, you could have crushed me with a word. And if some hard-line, crusty old fart had said to me, kid, you have nothing to say. You need to shut up and sit down, take the cotton out of your ears and shove it in your mouth and just keep quiet. I got to tell you, I probably wouldn't be alive today.
I think I would say exactly the same. I would agree with you completely.
And I hear people say, well, I needed that. And I'm like, well, okay, you may believe that, but how much more did you need a compassionate heart? And I think you can speak with a firm tone. You can be firm and serious without being degrading and chomping a person down. And
right.
that's what I mean, because I look. In fact, I don't know any recovery literature. AA, NA, Alcoholics for Christ, CA, Celebrate Recovery. Any of them. I don't see anywhere where it gives instructions to beat somebody up.
Well, exactly. But it goes on everywhere. You hear it in the pulpit and you hear it in the fellowship.
Yeah, you do. You hear it in both. And that's not attraction.
It's not attraction at all. And it wasn't what Jesus said.
Right.
He didn't say, come to me and I'll beat you up. He said, come to me and I will, I'll give you all your needs. I'll provide you with the things that you require. You come to me if you're burdened and labored, and I'll give you rest. I'll give you peace.
Yeah.
Isn't that beat you up? I mean, the other thing that we see in our fellowship is that there's this big confusion between religion and spirituality.
Right.
And the two are completely messed up in our fellowship. People look at anything that is mentioned about church or anything else, or God, let's say, and they get messed up with religion. And I always point out to them that, the only ones that the people that Jesus really got upset with, and I mean really angry, were the religious, hypocritical leaders of the day when he was around. He came and he ministered to the drunks, the alcoholics, the prostitutes, the liars, the cheats, the murderers, the tax collectors. He hung out with us. And he came, he said, to find us and to save us. Find the lost and heal the sick. And so this whole religious thing is, it's not about religion. It's about relationship.
Sure.
And that was my story. I had lots of religion. I had information. I had morals. I had all that. But I didn't have relationship.
Yeah, it's funny because, I've mentioned this before, and listeners probably get tired of hearing me say it, but I never get tired of telling it. I'll never forget years ago having a discussion with somebody that had been around for several years in a particular AA meeting, and they were telling me about how they hated organized religion, and I asked them, I said, well, what is it that you hate about it? And they thought for a minute, which I thought was interesting, that they had to think about it. But they thought for a minute, and they said, well, they're always asking you for money. I said, okay. So I wrote that down. I said, asking for money. I said, what else? He said, well, they stand behind a pulpit, and they say their way is the only way. I said, okay. They say their way is the only way. They shake a book at you and say that's the only truth. All right, they claim that one book is the only way. There's a lot of politics. I said, okay, politics. I said, I'm not really fond of all the candle lighting. He came from an Episcopal background, I guess. He said, I'm not really fond of all that ceremony stuff. And all right, over ceremonializing everything, lighting candles. Anyway, the list went on and on. And it was really interesting because I looked at that and I said, do you see what you just described to me? He said, well, what's that? I said, you described the standard AA meeting and business meeting. I mean, we're not that different. And we go to speaker meetings, and the guy says, you know what? This is the only way that you're going to stay sober is by this book. Is stand behind a pulpit. Some old timers will tell you if you don't put $1 in the basket, that you're cheating the program. They'll yell at you for it. I mean, and the politics. Oh my gosh! I said the only thing that I don't see here is I don't like the singing. But I've been to some 12-step campouts and we did some singing. So we're not that different. We're people that are hurting, that need our Creator's intervention, and we need to stop the right fighting, put down our rocks, and start getting on the same page. A lot of times we're just talking about semantics anyway, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's just, and I agree with you. I think in many circles it is getting better.
But, early on, when I was a Christian, I wanted to save the world, and I was going to, everybody I met had to know about Jesus, had to accept him. Well, that was ridiculous.
Right.
And I was just playing, I was a loudmouth. I was self-willed on riot, thinking I had the truth and everybody had to believe like me, which is nothing more than me. It wasn't God.
Yeah.
Then I got sober, and then I wanted everybody to get sober. So I was going to make everybody sober. And then I found out about Dick B. And then I went overboard on that too. Now I've got to talk about the Bible every time I share and talk about, what? I've realized that none of that is appropriate, none of it's accurate. It's all about being genuine and honest and reporting really about the truth and the history and the love of our Creator and how He wants us to have a better life. And that He has a life of fulfillment for us. We just need to stop doing the things we were doing and get in His will. And that's what the program says. When I stopped editorializing and making everything about me, even though I wasn't drinking, I found that people would listen and relate. So I'm still working on that, 18 years later. But it's just, it's a process for sure. I really love the process, and I love the journey. And I've also realized that if we don't work with others and newcomers, regardless of whether it's in the church community and the AA fellowship community, no matter where it is, at work, then we're really not doing what we were created to do, which is to share with our brothers and sisters about the truth of Christ. And when I found all that out and stop being, Roger the sales guy or Roger the AA guy or Roger the church guy, I realized that I could just be God's kid.
Yeah.
And the message in my life that He wants me to share with other people. And when I do that, guess who gets blessed? I do. And
Sure.
I have peace and joy because I know that I'm doing what God wants me to do.
Yeah.
And then if something happens on the other side of whoever I'm talking to, that's God and the Holy Spirit working. And I just get to be part of it, like this show. Being part of God's plan is the best thing in life.
Yeah. Amen to that. Because we can really muddy the waters. I'm so glad that God is not inhibited by my trying to get in His way.
My sponsor used to say to me all the time, and I have the same one for 18 years. He used to say to me, "Roger, stay out of your way and stay out of God's way."
Yeah, that's good.
He'd have a lot of sentences, but that was one of them he'd always say to me. And he'd say, "Make it a good day. Don't have a good day."
Ooh, I like that.
All kinds of little things like that. It makes it a good day.
Hey, listen, Roger, we are just about out of time. I want to give a shout out to our buddy Marco. You want to say hi to Marco?
Yes, hello, Marco, my friend. How are you, indeed? Another guy that I met like you, through Dick B. So it's kind of interesting how the community is going all the time.
Yeah. Well, Marco was here. He was here for about a week, and he traveled with me, helped me coast a couple shows. We went up to the coast and went to a treatment center and visited there, and then we got involved with the Recovery Northwest project, and he helped me with the booth and all of that. And he says, "You got to get Roger on the show, man." And I said, yeah, we need to do that. So I'm so glad that we were able to hook up and do this, brother. Thank you so much.
Oh, the blessing's all mine. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Will you come back with us again?
I would indeed. I'd love to. And I want to look forward to meeting up with you in February when you come down to Southern Cal.
Oh,
I need to come to you in Albany. I would love to go to some of your fellowship meetings and so on.
Oh, absolutely. That would be a blast. That would be an absolute blast. So let's stay in contact. Don't be afraid to drop me an email or give me a phone call and saying, "Hey, man, I haven't heard from you," because I get so swamped with stuff and requests for people on the show and things that sometimes my brain gets really scattered. So don't be afraid to holler out at me, okay?
I resemble those remarks, Monty, but I will make a point of that, for sure.
All right, Roger, any closing thoughts for the listeners, brother?
I just want to tell anybody that's listening, if you've got problems with drugs and alcohol or life in general, God's got the answer. The fellowship has a process, and it always works. Like Dr. Bob said, it will never not work. It works 100% of the time. He said that if you put half of the energy into your recovery that you were used to putting into getting another drink, this program will never fail. And then he said, your Heavenly Father will never leave you and never forsake you. That's what Bob said. I like that. I'll stand on that.
Hey, that sounds awesome. That sounds great. Wonderful truth. Absolute truth. All right, my friends, our email address, take12radio@comcast.net. Our website, take12radio.com. You can email us. You can watch this on our YouTube version, our download MP3 link on TuneIn Radio app. If you go to the TuneIn Radio app and type in Bill Post, BILLPOST, Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to noon, you can get the live feed of our show on the TuneIn Radio app and the Graceful Living Network. You can check us out there. We're just all over the place. And we just love to have you tune in, and we love to hear your comments. Somebody asked me the other day, why didn't you delete that guy's terrible hate mail that was on your YouTube channel? I said, why? I said, I'm not going to invite comments and then turn around and delete them. So, hey, if you don't like me, that's okay. I'm thick-skinned and tender-hearted. I learned how to be that way. The steps taught me how to do that. Roger, thank you again, my brother. God bless you, my friend. Stay on the line, okay?
Will do.
Okay, stay. All right, stay on the line. Folks, don't forget, do something right now that will make the person you will be tomorrow proud to have been the person you are today. Until our next broadcast, this is the Monty Man along with my guest, Roger McDiarmid, and we are wishing God's perfect serenity for you. Bye-bye now.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.